On today's episode, we scout LSU wide receiver Kyren Lacy. We're going to explain why we like him as a high day two prospect in the 2025 NFL draft for the wide receiver class. That and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parsons. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydays, and you know I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Can you talk to him, baby?
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ, man, and the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. DP, this is a playmaker episode, and guess what? We get to go to my neck of the woods. We are talking about wide receiver Kyren Lacy, scouting him, breaking him down. What type of playmaker is he? Where should you draft him, and what are the expectations? Then, how should wide receiver needy teams, right? You don't need one, you need two or three playmakers, right? Maybe the New England Patriots. How should you approach the draft? And then, what is the value of day two wide receivers, right? Guys, we have second, third round grades on. How good are they? What are they going to do? Where are they going to fit? Where are they going to slot? How many of them are there? We're going to have a playmaker episode. DP, let's start this thing off with a Bayou Bingo, man. Mr. Kyren Lacy.
It is crossover Thursday here at the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast Network, and it's presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use the code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Keith, 6'2", 210-pound wide receiver Kyren Lacy, also going to the Senior Bowl next month. That I'm excited to see him down there. Looking at his game, Keith, and looking at the paint the picture, set the table for the numbers. Me personally, Keith, I'm gonna say this. I think Kyren Lacy is one of the best. He's probably top 3 in route running and separation ability in this class at the wide receiver position, in my opinion. When I look at his ability, he's nuanced, he's detailed. A guy that knows he uses head fakes, the right footsteps. He knows how to push guys vertical, work out of the slot, work outside. He just does so many things well as a route runner. And when you think about that versatility, right, that positional versatility, that's how you become the favorite to a quarterback. Can you be what we need you to be? But also, can you make plays with the ball in your hands? He can do that as well. On the season, 58 catches, 866 yards receiving, 15 yards per catch, 9 receiving touchdowns. And, in terms of yards after catch, he averages like close to 5 yards after the catch, per catch. Keith, how do you feel about Kyren Lacy? Where are you drafting him right now off of the season before we get to the Senior Bowl? Because I think the Senior Bowl is going to give him an ample opportunity to raise his stock.
Yeah. When I think of Kyren Lacy, I think trying to give some more recent names. Rashee Rice, Jalen McMillan, a name that I really like. Jalen, I think, is a very good comp for him. And, I was high on Jalen. A lot of people talked about Jalen Polk. I'm like, I like McMillan a lot just because of the tempo and the just the savviness that he had with route running. So I look at it, and I guess you asked where would I put him or where would I draft him?
Yeah.
I'm looking at in this class, right? And there's still guys that, have to pop up. And we talked about like the Savion Williams and guys like that. In the second round, probably in the third round, I would take him. I think because I don't know if he has he's a guy you're going to look at and then he's going to check the box of the athletic threshold, right? Of being a wide receiver 1 in the NFL, right? I don't know if he's going to be that, and that's not a knock, right? Like, because you look at remember those, like all of those Bama wide receivers, which we all thought, hey, this guy could be wide receiver 1s, but you go to Devontae Smith, the Jalen Waddles, the Jerry Judys, right? And when you look at them, it's like good wide receivers, and that's how I feel like Kyren Lacy is a good wide receiver. He will be a good number 2 for an offense. I just don't know if he's a wide receiver 1, so I don't know if I'm pushing all the way that threshold of like hey, take him round one, just because the thing I have to see for Kyren is his 40 time. I don't know how fast he is separating vertically from guys. So I would take him late second, early third. Would feel really good if I could get him at the top of the third.
Yeah, I have him. I have him in that mid second round. I think with his ability to, at the end of the day, like especially court at the end of the day, if you have I don't think he's a wide receiver one. I don't think he's a wide receiver one. I think there's potential, depending on the offense. You know what I mean? We've seen guys like Troy Brown be a wide receiver one, Julian Edelman be a wide receiver. It's all depending on like the structure of the offense and what receiver is the point of the offense, right? So I think he could potentially be something like that. But I think he's a high end too, wide receiver two for an offense. A guy that, again, with his ability to beat man-to-man coverage, his identification of zone and the voids and the vulnerable spots against zone, how to settle in, but he's good after the catch, the agility, he can make guys miss. He has a good feel for space around him. He's concentration drops on tape, whereas like he's trying to run before he secures the ball and everything. So it's like, hey, like that type of stuff, like it's not like I'll put, our guy QJ still dealing with some drops in the NFL, Quentin Johnson. It's not like that, whereas like Quentin wasn't like true natural hands catcher, but you saw the ability, the potential for him to develop into that. Where I think Kyren's good with his hands, like because he attacks the ball at the highest point. I think it was the USC game where he did like the 180 that acrobatic catch in the back of the zone, like full extension from his frame, pluck the ball out of the air. It's just he has tendencies at times to try and run, like it's like putting the cart before the horse. You can't go nowhere without the horse. Like you got to bring the ball with you, and sometimes he tries to run before he secures the ball. And I think that's just something like, hey, secure it first, right? It's the same thing we see with players. They want to celebrate the touchdown and drop the ball before the end zone. Like, no, let's cross the plane first, get the score, make sure the points are secured. Then you can do whatever you want with the ball. I don't care if you punt it, flip it through the end zone, throw it at the referee and get a flag. I don't care what you do with the ball after you score first. I think with Kyren, just making sure you secure the ball before you start to transition into a runner. He has a tendency to do that a little too quickly, causes some concentration drops on him. But overall, I think he's a high-end wide receiver too. Comp-wise, I haven't found like a comp for him yet. Like, 6'2", 215, good route runner. I think the speed is good. I don't think he's great. So I don't think, like you said, it's going to be questionable. Can he run past NFL athletes in tight man-to-man coverage? His thing is going to be the release package, being able to move guys off their spot, get them, stack them early, win early at the line of scrimmage, and get vertical to where your quarterback go ahead and put it out there.
Yeah, and I think I look at the wide receiver conversation this is how I grade, right? I have to ask myself, when I put you in that first round, like top tier bucket, right, of guys, then I have to look at the top tier of the NFL, right? So if I'm going into a game, I'm drafting in the first round, be my wide receiver one, and we're playing the Denver Broncos, and you have to match up with Patrick Surtain. Do I feel like you're going to win those reps? You have to match up with Derek Stingley. Are you going to win those reps, right? The old Darius Slay, like just, the high-end corners, are you still going to win those reps? And there's going to be situations like, and I remember it's a couple years ago, right? It was Minnesota versus the Eagles, and you watching Justin Jefferson and Darius Slay battle back and forth, right? It wasn't a one-sided thing. Either way, like you can hold your weight class against some of the top in the NFL. So, like I said, I like Kyren Lacy. I like Kyren Lacy a lot. I think he can have a lot of value to an NFL team. And the part that we didn't talk about, he's a dog, right? He's a culture guy. He's coming in, he wants to punch people in the face, not literally, but figuratively, as far as I'm going out there and scrap and give it all I have. I care, right? I really care about winning football games. I care about being productive. I care about dominating the person across from me. So I think he's a culture setter. One of those guys, would do good with the Arizona Cardinals, right? Just give them some spunk, some fire. Just kind of.
I was just about to ask you any teams that popped into your head.
I think the Cardinals, just like because everybody thinks they're soft, right? Like, and still, it's still kind of like carrying over from the Cliff Kingsbury situation. You add guys like that to the locker room, then nobody's mistaken anymore, right? Like he's gonna block and he's gonna try to put the corner in the dirt. But DP,
I think the Broncos too. I think the Broncos
that they'll be another
as well.
I like that situation too. So basically, we're saying He's gonna end up out west, right? He's going out west, man. But DP, let's keep this thing going in Florida, man. What are we talking about? Wide receiver needy teams. How should they approach the draft, right? Should they be aggressive? Go get the top 3 guys. Should they fall back, trade out of those slots, draft up, stock up with the second, third round picks, or should they wait till late in the draft and draft 3 guys, right? And maybe take the approach that the Packers did a few years ago, right? When they drafted Dontavian Wicks and a couple of those other guys in the draft. Let's talk about that coming up next.
Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for. And Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Wide receiver needy teams, Keith, and their approach to addressing that position, improving that position for the 2025 season in the 2025 NFL draft. Keith, I look at this wide receiver class in this group, and I think it's good. We just had, I think, Eli Ayomanor. I'm not gonna lie, I was shocked by it. He's going to the Senior Bowl, so it's basically like that's his way of declaring I'm entering the draft. And I'm gonna tell you something. I'm happy about it, Keith, because that helps bolster this wide receiver class. Because this was a guy I felt like could have been a first-round pick all season. And when you look at teams that, like, for example, teams that absolutely need to address the wide receiver position, I think Tampa Bay needs to, because the Chris Godwin, the ACL injury, the lower body injury that he's out for the season with, he's about to be a free agent after the season as well. I look at the Indianapolis Colts, their receivers, they need to upgrade that situation. You think about the Denver Broncos, the Commanders. There's a lot of teams that need to really put some money and some resources into the wide receiver position. The Las Vegas Raiders, who won this week and bumped themselves down to the 6th overall pick. Keith, how do you feel like teams that need a wide, like, for example, I think what the Raiders need a wide receiver 1. And I forget who, I think my guy Ian on Twitter, he tweeted out, if the draft ended like this, they need to go ahead and sign Sam Darnold to a deal and draft Torrey McMillan with the 6th overall pick. Get a true wide receiver 1 to put in Las Vegas, pair him with a Brock Bowers, and you feel really good about that situation. How, in your opinion, how should these teams approach improving their wide receiver rooms?
Yeah, it's tough to be because there's a top 3, right? When we talk about Torrey McMillan, Travis Hunter, if he plays wide receiver, which that's tough because you don't know what position he's really going to play or what he wants to do at this moment. But let's just say he's going to play wide receiver. And then Luther Burton, who I feel like kind of went fairly under the radar, right? And you kind of don't know. Like, I think they're going to be questions about his speed also. I think, like I said, the Jackson Smith and Jigba conversation, I think is going to look very similar. Like, okay, what is his 40 time? We're going to start getting a little fake reports that NFL teams question how fast Luther Burton is. I think it's coming. So if I had to look at resumes and say, okay, who's the one complete wide receiver? I think it's T-Mac at this moment, right? So then the guys we just talked about, Travis Hunter, Luther Burton. The question is this: if you do your homework and do your research, do I take Luther Burton and Travis Hunter in the top 15, right? Or do I feel like I have these group of guys talking about the Eli Ayomanors, right? The Savion Williams, the Jack Beshes, the Kyren Lacys, and we can continue to go on and on, right, about those second, third tier bucket of wide receivers. Do I just try to get one of those guys because I feel like they actually might be a lot closer in value than what people are talking about, right? Like, there's the name, but then there's actually the draft prospect. So DP is tough because I do like Luther Burton and I really like Travis Hunter too. But I may look at it and say, hey, I may trade back and try to just double up. Like, especially if I need wide receivers, I'm not just banking all at one. I'd rather move down, get me a couple shots at it. And I think this, I mentioned it when we was transitioning, but this is the draft that you take the Green Bay Packers approach, where you get you a bunch of playmakers littered throughout the draft, right? And you draft them early and you draft them late, but you give yourself opportunity to walk away with 3-4 different guys, because I feel like it's going to be one of those situations where the wide receivers, even though they may not be complete guys, right, they offer good things, and now you want to draft complementary pieces to your wide receiver room.
Yeah, I think the first wide receiver, I don't know, New England, like, because now with the emergence of like Josh Connerly, Kelvin Banks playing high level ball, so they might still go tackle, right? But they need the number one wide receiver, so they could, if they get a T Higgins, as we talked about when we were talking about Drake May on the final topic on yesterday's show, if the Patriots went T Higgins, and it was like, well, we got a top 5 pick. Let's go with the best offensive tackle, which could be a Josh Connerly, Kelvin Banks, and everything like that, and improve that offensive line. Or maybe they could go wide receiver, get it to Torrey McMillan, and try and get an offensive tackle late. But you look at a team like the Dallas Cowboys, Keith, it's CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is one of the best receivers in the NFL. He doesn't have a viable running mate to take pressure off of him. You know what I mean? When you look at this wide receiver class, and they're sitting with the 15th overall pick right now. You know what I mean? With that win on Sunday Night Football against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, if I'm Dallas, man, if I'm a Dallas fan, I want us to try and to be aggressive, honestly. Like, I want us to go up and get one of these top receivers. Like, if Travis Hunter is slipping down the board because teams are reaching for a quarterback, let me get in that top 10. Let me send an extra pick for next year, and let me get Travis Hunter to pair with a CeeDee Lamb. Let me get it to Torrey McMillan to play with a CeeDee Lamb. Luther Burden, like, he could, those two can coexist because CeeDee can play on the outside more while Luther can play predominantly in the slot. And because that's where he plays. Luther doesn't play a lot outside. He shows some flashes of it, but CeeDee Lamb is more adept to playing outside than Luther Burden. But nonetheless, like, I just look at it like, if I'm Dallas, round one, I want to get one of the top receivers, man. I want to get one of these playmakers on the football. And honestly, you would prefer to try and get somebody with some explosiveness.
Yeah. So that was the question I was going to ask, is that getting one of the top wide, like, let's lose Dallas as a case study, right? That Dallas have a lot of problems, right? They got linebacker problems, they got DB problems, they got
Jerry Jones problem.
They got running back problems, a Jerry Jones problem. But I understand getting, like, if I could walk away with a Torrey McMillan across from CeeDee Lamb, like, that's chef's kiss, right? You feel like you did your job. But I want to ask this, that knowing that we have other problems, would you rather Torrey McMillan, or would you rather the combination of, let's say you get, I'm just throwing out a defensive prospects, Abdul Carter, right? You walk away with Abdul Carter, and then in the second round, you could get a guy like Matthew Golden, right? I think that's kind of the proposition that you may put yourself in, that you have to ask yourself which one, right? And I think that's kind of more the conversation. Which one do you go? Do you rather the Abdul Matthew Golden combination, or you like, hey, Torrey McMillan, his threshold is so high that I just want that?
Yeah, I mean, if you could walk away with Abdul to pair with Micah, you know, or I mean, knowing this Jerry Jones, he might be the replacement to Micah Parsons for all we know. You know what I mean? He might not even think it makes sense to pay Micah because it's just Jerry Jones. But if you're able to get Abdul, pair him with Micah Parsons, and then get Matthew Golden second, third round, like, that's a really good situation for you, because he's going to bring that route running, the separation ability, ball skills, and the explosiveness and the speed. So 100%, I think that makes a lot of sense for him. I just look at, again, Washington, that's another team. It's Scary Terry and what else? Right? It's Terry McLaurin and what else, man? Like,
big plays with Terry McLaurin, and then that's it.
I'm going to tell you a prospect I think that would be a good fit for them. Trey Harris, big 6'3", 210, 215, ball winner. Again, my comp for him is Michael Thomas. I think a guy that it won't wow you with the speed, but he knows how to win one-on-one with route running, with tempo, short area quickness. Good for a big body receiver that changes direction. Same way Michael Thomas lived for the most part in the short to intermediate in breaking areas of the field. That's where Trey Harris can live as well. And of course, having good hands, ball skills there, someone in the red zone with Jaden Daniels and his accuracy. Yeah, I think I absolutely think that this is a situation where Washington could benefit from that like greatly about adding a guy like Trey Harris, whether that's back into the first or on top of the second round if you want to move up and get him. Just like we got to see what that wide receiver 4 and 5. Those spots are just up for grabs right now. I still have Trey Harris, one of my top 3 guys. He actually bumped Luther Burden down a little bit from how he played, but he got hurt. There's a couple these wide receiver needy teams. I think unless you are close to the top, you say, okay, let me get best player available, and let's see what we have in round 2 and 3, which is funny enough, Keith, because we're about to get into rounds 2 and 3.
Yep. Well, let's talk about it, DP. You hinted at it. Let's jump full into it, man. We about to talk the value of day 2 round wide receivers coming up next.
The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. Why? Because it's thrilling. It's a lot of fun, guys. And again, they have so many different ways that you can bet on the games, on the players with FanDuel Sportsbook. All you need to do to get in on the action is just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com to join today for your chance at $250 back in bonus bets. That's $250 back in bonus bets. Guys, you can't miss out on a deal like this. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen to day and every day. Sorry for being our everydayers. There's some good value on day 2 of the 2025 NFL Draft class at the wide receiver position, Keith. And the guy we haven't talked about much, man, Jalen Royals from Utah State, 6 foot, 205. Reminds me of Jaden Reed a little bit over with the Green Bay Packers.
Mm-hmm.
Speed, explosiveness, run after catchability, route running, and everything. A guy that can play at the Z, play in the slot. Definitely can work the short and intermediate game, but has enough speed to win over the top. He got hurt this year. He's supposed to be at the Senior Bowl, so he's basically, we know how Jim Nagy operates. You're not coming here to do interviews. You're going to play here. So I expect him to be healthy and ready to go. I think he has a real shot to elevate his stock in those one-on-ones against the DBs that we're going to see down in Mobile. This is a good player, man. A good wide receiver, good hands, a guy that truly can separate. And I love the fact, like when I watched him on tape against off coverage and soft press, his process of being able to push you vertical, consistently gaining ground before he breaks, right? He's not in a rush. He's not like trying to do too much at the line of scrimmage with all the dancing and dancing with the stars moves and hip swirls and all like the stuff you see in some of these training videos. Like, no, he's very. I'm trying to remember. How did Quinyon Mitchell explain to me? No nonsense. Quinyon Mitchell said Roman Wilson at the Senior Bowl was a no nonsense guy. He didn't do a lot. He didn't do all the other stuff. He was like, he gets straight to the point. I'm gonna release, hit my route, hit my break point. I'm gonna separate. And that's how I feel about Jalen Royals. Like, he's not going to waste a lot of time trying to foot fire in place. And no, he's going to gain ground. He's going to separate, man. So I think we're talking about good value day 2 wide receivers, whether that's second or third round. I think right now he has a mid to late he's got late second round grade for me right now. I think if he goes to the Senior Bowl and rips it up, man, like he's got a chance to push himself up to that middle, maybe top of the second round spot, because I think he's going to test well.
Yeah, and DP, I guess looking at the segment, right, just day 2 value wide receivers, there are even more names that we didn't talk about. Like you look at Evan Stewart from Oregon. I think that he still hasn't got the necessary run and, I guess, accolades that his actual profile
target share.
Well, yeah, target share, right? And then just the look. But I mean, obviously his teammate Tez Johnson is playing well. So I think there's a lot of value. You look at Kobe Hudson, right? And I'm not 100% sure if he declared, right? But this is a guy that we watched during the summer and we both liked a lot. Like he had a lot of savviness to him. So just another wide receiver that I think the value of day 2 wide receivers, I think that's the sweet spot for this draft. Is the day 2 wide receivers and getting the value that you could, because if you watch these guys and you like, man, I think this could be my wide receiver 2, and you can walk away with, I don't want to say 2 wide receiver 2s, right? But almost 2 wide receiver 2s, 2 guys that you could supplement to make your wide receiver core look really good and revamp it. Because there's some talented players that sit inside of that top 100 that are wide receivers that you don't necessarily have to be aggressive in round 1, but you could get one in round 2. And then I would just want in this draft in totality, I would just want multiple picks in round 2 and multiple picks in round 3. You give me that, I feel like I could come out with really good value in the position that I drafted these guys. It matches up.
I like that, Keith. I like that, just having those multiple picks so that you can kind of have the pick of the litter. Like, and especially if you have multiple needs at the position, like, hey man, I need a big body guy. Well, if you need a big body guy, Caden Prather from Maryland, 6'3", 210 pounds, good speed, guy that can you don't really like to throw like smoke screens and tunnel screens to those tall, long leg receivers because they can't really make guys miss, in tight space. He's actually pretty solid at doing so, and everything like that. So like, he's a guy that you can get 3rd round. Ricky White, if you're looking for speed, at the Z receiver spot, 6'1", 190 from UNLV, right? Like there's multiple guys. And he said with Evan Stewart, I think with him, people have to just watch the tape and see him get open. It's just the fact he's not getting the ball a lot. One of my favorite receivers, I think it should be a day 2 pick for sure, is Pat Bryant from Illinois, 6'3", 200 pounds, and a guy that could give you that positional versatility and flexibility. He could play the X, he could play the Z, he plays a slot, especially working the end breaker type of options. The slot fades are there. Another guy you think about the Washington Commanders, when you have an accurate quarterback like a Jaden Daniels, especially down the field, putting a guy like Pat Bryant, who's going to get favorable matchups, only helps your offense. So this it's crazy, Keith, because this wide receiver class isn't the Malik Neighbors, the Marvin Harrison Jr., the Roma Dunze, and like Brian Thomas Jr., who looks like the best rookie receiver out of all of the guys right now, and how he's playing well and his speed is taking over games. Like, it's not as top heavy and explosive as what we saw last year, but this is still a good wide receiver class. And I think for teams that, hey man, understand there's so much defensive talent in round 1. I don't want to bypass, or I don't want to reach for a receiver when I can get a Nick Scourton, I can get a Princely Umami Yellen, to help my edge rush, or whatever, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, like those guys in the back end. I can get me a receiver, a Jalen Noel. Like, you know what I mean? If you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, like, man, I don't know if we can pay.
That's another good wide receiver.
Him and Jaden Higgins.
Very similar to Roman Wilson, right? Just in his profile and everything. So I agree, DP. I think that not being overly patient, but patient is key with this wide receiver class. And I wonder if there's going to just be a run at one point, right? They're going to all come like picks 40 through 62, right? And it's like 5 to 10 wide receivers taken in that short span. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. Every listen is greatly appreciated here over at Locked On NFL Draft. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all can talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. And come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.